Hey there guys, Ethan here, I hope you're doing well. Today's video discussion is on Book 16 of Wings of Fire. More specifically, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on what I think could happen in the book based on the information that has already been made available to us. Now, I would have made this video a long time ago, but I wanted to wait for more information to actually come out, as well as the cover of the book. The book releases in March next year, so it's actually not that far away, it's quite close. In terms of what happens in the books, the synopsis does vaguely say the premise of the book, as it should, so I'm going to be more discussing about how I think things might go down, if that makes sense. Before I begin, I am going to say that there will obviously be spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, please stop watching this video. Maybe come back in March after you've read the book and watch this video and then make fun of me for how much I got wrong instead. So yeah, let's get started. Before I go over what I think is going to happen, we have to go over what we already know so that we have all the information. And there are three main pieces of information that is confirmed that I know of. We have a synopsis and an excerpt of the book that we read at FanWing Fest, and the book cover. I'll go over each in that order and analyze them, and then after I'll make predictions based on all the information that I've gathered. I think at one point I did see something about a short quote from the book that would end up being on the jacket of the book, but I can't seem to find anything of it, so if you know anything about it then feel free to comment on it. Starting with the excerpt, I'll just read it out loud since I think it does a pretty nice job at condensing down all the information, and it's also not too long. Umber was never supposed to be a hero. As the youngest sibling of his mudwing hatching, Umber doesn't have the responsibilities of his big wings, Reed, nor the heroic destiny prophesied for his brother Clay. He's always been content with his role as the cheerful, goofy little brother. But when his sister Sora causes a tragedy at Jade Mountain Academy, Umber finds himself on the run and thrown into a whole new role, that of a protector. Umber and Sora fly south in search of a place where they can live far away from other dragons, until a kind hybrid dragon named Mulberry saves them from a kraken attack, and Umber realizes they don't have to survive alone after all. In fact, there's an entire community living on a forgotten island full of dragons hiding from their own dark pasts. As the two Mudwings settle into the Court of Refuge, they start to realize that nothing in this place is quite what it seems, and the protection it offers comes with a price. Even as Umber falls for Prince Mulberry, he learns he must find a way to unlock the past of this mysterious island to ensure he and Sora have a future. And when the dragons in power try to stop him, he'll have to decide what he cares about most, and whether he can be the heroes these dragons need after all. So already this seems quite interesting. In terms of the mindset that Umber seems to be taking on in this book, it seems a bit similar in a way to Clay's, in the sense that he doesn't feel ready for the responsibility that is being put onto him. Except in Umber's case, he didn't know that the responsibility would fall onto him so suddenly, unlike Clay, who knew about it his entire life. An important detail here is how it mentions when Sora causes a tragedy at Jade Mountain Academy. So this means that this book takes place shortly after Moon Rising and probably during Winter Turning and the rest of Arc 2. Of course, there could be some time skips in the book, but I find that the main series books tend to be within small periods of time apart from the Legends novels. Then again, if we're going back to the Arc 2 period in the timeline, who knows what could happen. Maybe there's a large time skip between book 16 and 17, or during 16 that pushes the timeline up to shortly after the Breath of Evil is defeated at the end of the Flames of Hope. And so the synopsis also describes that Umber probably will need to step up in terms of who he is, as Sora made a big mistake and now he needs to protect her. Perhaps this will result in Umber becoming more of a serious and mature character than who he used to be. Not that I found him particularly immature earlier in the series though, he's just a little bit goofy. Next thing it says is that they fly south, presumably south of Jade Mountain, so probably somewhere in this grasslands area over here, or maybe a bit west. We know from the excerpt that I will go over in a little bit that they are purposefully flying out to sea away from the continent. Now, I don't know what they were expecting to find. They probably thought that maybe they could fly across the South Pole over to southern Pantula, maybe. But anyways, on a somewhat unrelated topic, I shouldn't be as excited as I am about this, but they get attacked by a kraken. These little things have been on the maps for literally forever, and they're finally in the books, and I think that's fantastic. Although I guess it isn't unrelated, because it does give us somewhat a good piece of information, and it's that if they found monsters out at the sea, they must have flown quite far out. So then the synopsis introduces us to Mulberry, where he is described as a hybrid and later in the synopsis a prince. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a hunch that he might be who the title is talking about, or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Jokes aside, it would appear that this island he brings them to, similar to the Nightwings, have kind of their own kingdom on the island. And so now we know that this is where dragons who are either not welcome in their tribes or have made grave mistakes in the past go to. Maybe we'll see some talents of peace here, but at the same time, this strikes me as a place that not many dragons know about. And so essentially what the conflict is that there is something sinister about either the past of the island, or the way that it is run that Umber needs to find out, and so the dragons in charge are trying to stop him. Now, it does mention that he falls for Mulberry. Now, what does that mean exactly? What direction could this take? Does it mean that Mulberry is going to decide to go against his kingdom in order to help Umber, or is it going to be like a betrayal situation where Mulberry uses Umber to his advantage? Personally, I think the former is more likely than the latter. When it says that Umber falls for Mulberry, my interpretation is that they fall for each other, but maybe it was purposefully worded in that way so that it would technically be saying that the feeling wasn't mutual. But I honestly doubt that. The final sentence of the synopsis really intrigues me because it gives me the feeling that the government of the island is the real threat and the dragons living there are simply just victims, and that this is Umber's chance to save them. But yeah, I think this is a great synopsis, some really good information while still kind of maintaining that mystery and vagueness of the threat. One more thing, it also shows on Amazon that the book is 352 pages long, which I think is fantastic because usually these main series books are about 270 to 300 pages, with a couple of exceptions, like Darkness of Dragons. This book is about the length of Darkstalker, which is great. I don't know if this is confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt, but I have heard that this arc will be a trilogy. I don't know for sure. I want to make that very clear. I do not know for sure. Personally, I hope that's not the case, but at the same time, I don't really care that much because I'm just glad that we're getting something in the first place. And also, if the other books followed the same trend as being a little bit longer, like this one, I think that it would probably be better in terms of fleshing out the characters and effectively telling the story. And you know, if Tui thinks that it would be better to write these books in 3 than 5, then it's probably the right choice. Now let's move on to the excerpt. Just to be clear, I'm just communicating the information in this section of the video because if I try to interpret it, I'll start analyzing it and I want to save that for later. And so we do know the excerpt that Tui read out at FanWing Fest. Unlike the synopsis, I'm going to just summarize all the details that I got from it since it's much longer and I think that it'd be more efficient to do it that way. If you want to read it yourself though, there is a link to the document in the description. So what we can take, or at least what I took from the excerpt, is that Umber and Sora are looking to leave Pyria. They are flying south of the continent. Mulberry tells them that he knows a safe place. It takes 3 days of flying from where they meet to get there. They reach an island about a quarter the size of Pyria, probably around the size of the Sand Kingdom. The part of the island that they are at is predominantly reddish-brown mountains with some forests. They reach a giant wall as tall as the mountains, with windows carved into it, likely a palace or a part of it. Despite trying to protect her, Umber seems quite upset still at what Sora did. This place says that it's for the safety and protection of all. We are introduced to Queen Beryl, who welcomes them into the Court of Refuge. Queen Beryl is an adult Skywing with dark red scales and a lean angular face. Queen Beryl says she is glad they are here, almost too much if you ask me, almost to the point where it's a little bit unsettling. So yeah, that's what I got from the excerpt. A little bit more detail in terms of what the environment we will be in and what it will look like, as well as the personality or persona of Queen Beryl. Queen Beryl is a bit mysterious already because we saw in the guidebook that she was already on Queen Scarlet's list of adversaries. We don't know why, but that might be something that's explored in this book. We also find out that this island is very far from Pyria, as it takes 3 days to get there. But at the same time, personally, I have found how fast characters travel around the world to be extremely confusing and inconsistent, so I can't really pinpoint a distance here. I would assume that they fly mostly east or west to somewhere south of a different part of Pyria, maybe south of the Sea Kingdom or south or in the southern part of the ocean between Pantel and Pyria. In terms of what the Court of Refuge is, it wasn't entirely clear to me at first, but based on how it's worded in both the excerpt and the synopsis, it seems to be what the dragons are calling this island. So it's like a kingdom, but not really, not officially. Now moving on to the cover art of this book, I have to say it is absolutely gorgeous. Joyang did a wonderful job here. The dragons, the landscape, the colors, they all look great. Like all the other covers, they are all very unique to each other, and this one is no different. The purple sky against the red landscape makes a very unique color combination that we haven't seen before in the series, so that's great. It also gives us a good visualization of the environment of the island. It looks like the main area we are in is surrounded by, as described in the excerpt, these huge red mountains, and there seems to be some kind of brown lake or dirt field in the valley. There's also a desert in the background, or at least it kind of looks to me like a desert. And of course the dragons. Now, Umber, honestly, I don't have much to say, except that he looks great. Although that's really it, because Mulberry is the one stealing the show here. I think Mulberry looks really good. I like how in the more recent covers, the side characters have been drawn on the other side of the full version cover, because it's almost 2 covers combined into one while still being coherent. And since the island is so large as well, maybe we'll even get a map provided to us for it. I think that would be amazing. I'm not expecting it. I feel like that's a little bit much, but you know, who knows? Who knows? I think that would be so cool though. In terms of what kind of hybrid Mulberry is, I think I know. My first thought was Skywing Mudwing due to the colors of his scales, except then I realized that his wings are shaped like leaves, and just his whole body resembles a leafwing. Accounting for the predominant red, I am led to assume that he is a Skywing Leafwing hybrid, so I think that's a pretty safe conclusion. The only thing that threw me off in this cover was the structure behind Umber. I'm not gonna lie, it looks awesome. It looks really cool. But the interesting part is how sophisticated the architecture of the structure is. In fairness, we haven't had too many solid looks at the other structures and palaces in the series, but in comparison to this, they seem a bit more primitive. I'm sure it'll make complete sense when the book actually comes, but it is a little bit jarring, but it's very cool. So yeah, that is a lot of information to digest here, but it's good because it's a lot to work with. There's a lot of information to make predictions and to ask questions about the book. I think I just want to go one by one over each aspect of the book that I'm most curious about. I'll start with Beryl and the mystery of Leafwing, moving on to what the thread of the book might be, and then ending off with how this book might connect to the following books in the rest of the series. Now, there's so much to discuss, I could be here for hours speculating, so I'm just going to keep it to those 3 parts. So we'll start with Queen Beryl and Mulberry. So we know that Queen Beryl is fully a Skywing, she is not a hybrid, and Mulberry is a Skywing Leafwing hybrid. So the question is, who is this Leafwing? I find it very interesting how it is a dragon from a Pantalan tribe and not Pyrian, and it's not like the Lost Continent has been discovered by Pyria in the timeline yet, so I can probably count on Umber and Sora being pretty confused when they find Mulberry. This leads me to believe that the island the book takes place on is somewhere in the south between Pantel and Pyria, so nowhere near the Kingdom of Sea, because logically, the 2 tribes would meet right in the middle of the ocean. In fact, since this is an island where they are running from their past, maybe the reason why there's a Leafwing there is because of the tree wars. In terms of the timeline, it kind of makes sense. He might be a bit on the older side to have dragonettes since the tree wars were like 50 years ago, but I'm sure it's possible. I doubt that Mulberry and this mystery Leafwing ended up meeting on Pyria because surely somebody would have noticed a Leafwing, right? And also, it makes sense that Beryl would be on this island running from her past because we know from the guidebook that Scarlet wants to kill her very badly. Although this is where I get stuck. If Beryl wasn't in trouble with Scarlet due to a hybrid affair, then what could it be? Perhaps Beryl was in a similar situation as Kestrel in the sense that she was serving Scarlet. Scarlet went back on an order or just straight up screwed her over, and then she had to become a fugitive. While I feel that's likely knowing Scarlet's nature, I feel like that would be a bit boring. I much like the idea that maybe Beryl wanted to challenge or overthrow Scarlet. It kind of makes sense since now Beryl is a queen herself. Perhaps she just wanted to be a queen, she couldn't overthrow Scarlet, so she got kicked out and ran away to this island where she could become queen here instead. I think that would fit, maybe. The only inconsistency is that nobody has mentioned it in the series so far. You'd think they'd say at some point, oh, you don't want to mess with Scarlet. One time a dragon tried to overthrow her and that dragon was never seen again, or something like that. If the attempt was too small and forgettable for people to mention, then why would she be so high up on Scarlet's hit list? So that's what I think of Beryl. I already, from the excerpt, get a very unsettling feeling from her, and I have a feeling that she could potentially be the main antagonist. In fact, I think that's most likely. Or perhaps she is something else, and Beryl is more like Coral in the way that she's just kind of immoral sometimes and a bit of a nuisance. In terms of what the actual threat of the book will be, that, of course, is probably the hardest to predict, and the synopsis, understandably, was very, very vague in that area. We know for sure that a part of the threat is the dragons in power. I don't know for sure if Queen Beryl is going to be the main villain, but the synopsis says quite clearly that the dragons in power try to stop him, and it keeps feeling more and more likely that that's the case. In terms of what they are trying to hide, I have no idea. My first thought, since this is an island full of dragons who have made terrible mistakes, was that the villain was trying to commit mass homicide on the island. There's some logic to that, yes, but there's also not a lot. But if the villain is the dragons in power, wouldn't they be doing the exact opposite of that? That's kind of where I get stuck. Because why would they be ruling dragons they hate? Would they have killed them by now? Or maybe they're just trying to lure in all of these bad dragons, and when enough have come, that's when they pull the plug. That might be a possibility, but based on the threats from the other books, it seems a bit simple and, well, predictable, and also just kind of dumb at the same time. You know, while I'm trying my best, I also want to say that I hope with all these predictions, I hope I get them wrong. Or at least a lot of them wrong, because I think it's better to have an unpredictable book. Or maybe the dragons in power themselves have committed even more despicable acts than the inhabitants of the island, and they are trying to cover themselves up because what they did is unforgivable, and maybe they're still doing those things. But it's weird because it conflicts with everything they stand for, because wouldn't one of the main themes be about forgiving dragons, about their past mistakes? I don't think that's the case, because that just doesn't make sense. And can the kingdom even be realistically corrupt enough for that to be the case? I have a lot of doubts about the series regarding the threat of the book, but I figured I might as well just throw it out there. There's one sentence in the synopsis that really interests me, and it's that Umber will have to decide what he cares about most. My mind immediately goes to maybe he has the chance to save either Mulberry or Sora, but not both. He'd probably be conflicted because he's in love with Prince Mulberry, yet he hasn't known him for that long, and he loves Sora as well. He's known her his entire life, yet she just murdered a few dragons not too long ago at Jade Mountain. So I bet that he's gonna need to make an extremely tough decision at some point. Honestly, I would really like to see something like this happen because I feel like characters we care about don't die enough in the series. It's always the villains who die. It's never the main characters. It doesn't have to be, it can just be a side character. It's always the villains who die. And you know, I just want more death to all the characters, not just the villains. I think a prime example is the first book because there is a ton of death in that book, but not that many of them were antagonists, actually. So yeah, I got a little bit sidetracked there, but the last thing I'll be discussing is how it might connect to the present timeline. There are a couple of possibilities. Maybe this book will occur over, like, the course of a week, and then there's a big time skip between books 16 and 17, all the way to where we left off in Flames of Hope, or even beyond that. Another possibility is that as the book goes on, every few chapters there are some significant time skips to align the book with the current timeline, similar to how the Legends novels work. I personally hope that the second option is the case because I just find it so interesting and kind of thought-provoking whenever books take place over a long period of time. But honestly, either way works. I also really hope that this arc goes into the direction of the newer generation. It doesn't seem like that now, but it could change directions. So I'm talking dragons like Peacemaker and Bumblebee and Cliff and maybe some other new dragonets we haven't seen before. You know, I used to really dislike how Peacemaker was made into a hybrid, but just think about how sick it would be if Peacemaker were on a cover art. a Nightwing with rainbow star speckled wings, that would be so cool and very unique as well, because we haven't actually seen a hybrid on a cover yet. Or well, the main dragon on a cover. I guess technically we have Mulberry now, but on the main front cover of the book, we haven't seen a hybrid yet, so that would be very interesting. Apart from Arc 1, there has always been an outlier in an arc. For example, Book 8 and Arc 2 and Book 14 with Arc 3, so maybe this book is going to be the outlier. But it's also a little bit odd to start that way, if it is. Anyways, my theory is that something on the island happens in this book which causes the dragons that are living on this island to maybe need to flee to either Puria or Pantala, which is where the other POV characters will come in, and this is where their lives start being affected by the events that transpire on this island. If we do end up involving the newer generation, I would think that there would maybe be a time skip of at least maybe 4 or 5 years after the Flames of Hope. Since Umber was in the same hatching as Clay, I think he'd be about 7 years old at this point. If there is a time skip of 4 or 5 years then that would make the newer Dragonets of a similar age to Umber, maybe slightly younger, but around the same. Maybe I'm just being hopeful though, because I really don't like young Dragonets in the series. That's why I would hope that there is a fairly large time skip, because it would give them time to realistically mature and actually be bearable to read for an entire book. But maybe that's just me though. Also, I think if there does end up being a time skip of a few years, I think Tui might try to incorporate some of the previous POV characters in some way. Not in a significant role, just more to catch up on how they are doing and how their lives have gone. I think that might occur to some degree. Maybe not a lot, but maybe just a little bit. But yeah, that was a whole lot of yapping right there, and thank you if you sat through all of that. Personally, I am very excited about this book. I feel like it's a fresh new chapter for the series, and I'm very interested in seeing what direction it's taken in. It's also because I haven't read a new main series book for the first time since 2022, when the Flames of Hope released. I hope that the gaps between books aren't too long while this arc progresses. But yeah, so feel free to leave a comment if you're excited about this book. What do you think? What don't you like about what we've seen so far? Do my predictions seem reasonable or not? And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.